Okay, kids, let's get this party started.
Cool.
So let's start with some intros.
Is there a specific camera we should be looking at? Top?
Any of them.
There are people in all of the cameras.
Okay.
Right.
Let's start with Brandon. Intros.
Me intro? Like
You
just me?
intro.
So if you guys don't know me, my name's Brandon. I started Focus Freedive several years ago. Just trying to kind of band the community together and really had a vision for just adding some clarity around the MPA situation, kind of what step of the process we're in and kind of how we can prepare moving forward as I'm sure this very long process begins to unfold. So who's up next?
I think that would be me. My name is Ryan Moore. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. I am owner and operator here at Spear America San Diego and am a team diver for Rife International Spear Guns. Happy to be here and hopefully shed some light on kind of what is going on with this MPA petition situation.
Nice. My name is Andrew Ferris. I'm an instructor here in San Diego. I work with Brandon and Ryan. We train together, and I hang out with a lot of freedivers and spearfisher people. I am not a spearfisher person, and so I'm a person who loves the same parts of the ocean as the people who spearfish. Mm-hmm. And so I'm here to partly provide a non-Spiro perspective, I think.
And I'm Robin. I'm happy to now be part of Focus Freedive as we build this pretty awesome community in Southern California, San Diego area. I call myself a citizen scientist and an ocean conservationist. I also come as a non-spearfisher person. That might change, who knows? But I'm in it for the preservation of existing biodiversity and really like to come at things from a very scientific point of view with lots of data. So I look forward to discussing the MPAs and how they're going to affect us all and what we can do about it to make sure that it's going to be the best for everybody and everything. So with that, what are these petitions and why should we care?
Do you want to kind of lay the scene down?
Yeah, so kind of what we're looking at right now is we're at what they call a decadal review. This is every 10 years, the Department of Fish and Game accepts petitions for any changes that can happen to the MPAs that are currently in place, whether that be reducing MPAs or their functionality or increasing MPAs or their functionality. So right now...
What is an MPA?
Good question.
What a great question, right?
MPA stands for Marine Protected Area. So this, of course, comes in a variety of rules and regulations. For example, some areas you will not take, and you're not allowed to take anything out of that designated area completely. Other areas maybe have more specific things that you can or cannot take out of those areas. So looking at where we're at in this situation, MPAs go under review every 10 years, and we just started the decadal process. So what they're trying to decide right now is ultimately what the process should be in which they review the petitions being submitted.
So safe to say we're at the beginning of a very long process.
We're at the beginning of the first decadal review since the MPAs were only fully placed as a California Marine Protected Area network 10 years-ish ago. This is the first one. And so, yes, this is already very obviously going to be a long process because there's a lot of different interests and a lot of people who see similar goals achieved in different ways coming together.
So the MPAs get reviewed every 10 years. we're at the beginning of the process.
Yes.
They're accepting proposals for how to change the MPAs.
They accepted
what changes are on the table.
Past tense, because
Yeah.
I think it closed in like December or something. But anyone, like whether it was a citizen or a group, could I believe submit petitions.
Yeah, you just have to fill out the paperwork.
Exactly. And so we're at that stage now where they've been submitted. The decadal review is closed. The petitions have been submitted. 20, I think. Was there 20 that were submitted or fully submitted or approved?
Right. So it's 20 petitions with, I think, up to 80 proposed revisions to the MPAs
Right.
and what they have going on.
Now, is
Right.
that just for San Diego, or is that for all of
This is the
California?
California
That's all of
coast.
California.
Which,
Yep,
so that's
as a
it's actually
state.
kind of surprising that only 20 were submitted.
It's really funny because I remember when the MPAs, there was a lot of meetings, when the process was going forward years ago to actually choose which areas would be MPAs, how they would decide what would be what type of MPA. And I was like a young college kid, so we were attending these meetings because we cared about the ocean and we were, consumers of the resources there. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, when they told us in 10 years they'll get reviewed, and I remember thinking, oh, okay, 10 years, we'll watch out for that. Well, 10 years just happened, and I completely forgot about it until I heard about these petitions. I think a lot of people were caught either completely flat-footed where they never had heard of this, or were like, oh my gosh, like that already happened.
Right.
And the implication being people were spearing, hunting in these areas, and we're expecting them to be hunting grounds for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it was a major, I guess, change in the way things had always been in California, because previously there wasn't this system of marine protected areas. And then all of a sudden you were telling people that had been maybe using these resources and visiting these locations for consumptive purposes for generations, that all of a sudden, like, some of these areas will no longer be available to you. From the fisherman diver side of things, it was like, oh my gosh, it was like very shocking to think that like these areas that your grandfather and father and you all had fished were potentially going to be taken away. And I think that a lot of us have realized that this was not a bad thing necessarily, because there's a lot of benefits to the MPA system.
Sure, change is always hard.
For sure. And as far as like the ecosystem goes, I think that most of us it'd be very easy for us to like come to the conclusion that like having areas that are no take or restricted take makes sense, because the environment, the animals in those environments can live without any pressure from human consumption, which how could that not be beneficial, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of us have come to terms that it's not bad that there's MPAs, but there needs to be a balance of what is and isn't, available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in terms of the process, I believe a meeting just happened.
Yes.
I was able to hop in on maybe 40 minutes of 6 hours.
Right.
So maybe together we could kind of surmise
Yeah.
what went
Sure.
on.
Yeah. So the meeting really was about
This is the meeting on April 20. No,
No,
sorry,
the one that
March
just happened,
20,
yeah.
March 19th.
March 19th. Yeah.
Yes.
So on March 19th, the Marine Resources Committee had a meeting about the process in which they are filtering through petitions. Kind of what's going to be important to look at, maybe what's less important to look at. They're going to be looking at all petitions, obviously, but kind of which ones are more urgent versus less urgent. So it's really just the process in which they're approaching the petitions that they're working out right now at this moment.
It's very bureaucratic, but
Right.
it has to be.
Bureaucracy at its
Yeah.
finest, right?
Yes, of course.
So I do know that there is a meeting coming up in the middle of April where I believe the Fish and Game Commission is then putting it to a vote of whether or not this process that was proposed is getting used or not, or if they need to amend things.
So again, we're at the very beginning
So
of
this is like, yeah.
what's going to be
Yeah.
probably at least a year-long process. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it'll be
Or multiple
long.
years.
Yeah.
Or
So
multiple years.
I think there was a lot of confusion about this March 19th meeting because there was not a lot of information. Like I said, so many of us were caught very flat-footed that this decadal review was now here, and then like the early things I heard about the March 19th meeting through the circles of people I was talking to was that this was Southern California's chance to like either air their opposition or support for the petitions. But the reality was, like Brandon said, that this meeting was about talking about what the proposed process for evaluating the petitions was, not so much to like air your support or your opposition for said petitions. We haven't even got to that phase. That is
Right.
way down the pipeline.
That being said, though, it did seem like there were a couple that really stood out, especially to locals.
Oh yeah, there was people fired up about a couple of the petitions.
Wondering
no
if we
question.
can kind of give the DL on those. I believe in particular the one that I'm talking about is 2023-33,
Yes.
which was going to be the expansion of some MPAs. I believe there's 7, 3 or 4 of which are in Southern California. One is Point Loma.
Yes,
So
Cabrillo
it's-
SMR, which was the one that caught most of our attention.
Yeah. So why would an expansion be bad? I mean, it seems like a good thing. You just said,
Sure.
an MPA, it protects things, but
Well, the Cabrillo SMR currently is a fairly near shore section of the tip of Point Loma itself. Point Loma is a large area. I think if I remember right, it's like less than 6 miles from the tip of Point Loma up into Ocean Beach. It's like 5 point something nautical miles. The proposed MPA expansion for Point Loma was for 15.2 square miles, which is basically the length of Point Loma all the way out to 250 feet of water,
and what would that mean?
roughly.
In layman's terms,
I mean,
what does that mean?
To be honest, the petition says that it is open to considering different levels of MPA, whether it's like restriction on, certain MPAs allow you to take pelagic finfish, certain MPAs are complete closures. So they basically had said that they were open to looking at, different styles of MPAs. The whole purpose of this petition was to protect reef areas that had healthy kelp growth, basically.
Sure.
The resilient.
Resilient,
kelp
that was the word I
Right.
was looking for. Yeah, resilient kelp forest,
Yeah.
yes.
So the entire purpose of this is to protect kelp forests.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a lot of the consumptive users, fishermen and divers, worry that it's kind of a land grab, like a grab for territory for those that want blanket closures as opposed to managed areas of the coast.
Or
where-
just a knee-jerk kind of blanket reaction
Yeah.
instead of a scientifically based,
for sure, because
data-based decision.
you could for sure make arguments either way that and I feel you could make the argument much more strongly that fish take doesn't have a major effect on kelp growth because kelp growth, from everything I've ever been told, was majorly based on water temperatures, water clarity because it needs a lot of light to grow, and nutrient contents in the water. There is for sure some kind of an argument you could make that there are certain species of fish that maybe eat certain organisms that are detrimental to kelp or stress kelp growth. But from everyone I've talked to and from everything I've ever seen, it seems like that is a reach.
I wanted to share just a quote here from Ethan Estes, who's a marine scientist who is opposing this petition, who, just to kind of back up what you were saying, says, and quote, he says, "I wouldn't be saying this if I thought that this was a resource that was overfished or that was in any way unhealthy. But anybody who spends time in these kelp forests can see that they're super well managed," implying super well managed already, "so that there is no need for additional very strict protected areas that are being proposed." And to back that, and also what you were saying, a list available on NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association's website, lists kelp forest threats as being commercial kelp harvesting, pollution, climate change, El Nino, which we are experiencing right now, invasive species, water pollution, and shoreline development. None of that is fishing, especially from a recreational or non-commercial standpoint, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I think a lot of the, there's a lot of emotions going
Sure.
on right now from a lot of different sides. And so I think that, we all want the same thing. There just happens, like I said before, to be a difference in how the different groups see us getting to that, final place of healthy ecosystem.
And kind of none of us really know, because as you said, this is the first decadal review, correct?
Right.
So this is all, I just want to kind of emphasize here that the more we get involved at this stage, I think we can set a precedence for moving forward.
Right.
As, not just the process, but as a community speaking up and being involved in decisions like this.
I mean, I think that's a big part of why we have such a valuable, healthy resource here in Southern California, is that compared to many other parts of the planet, we have incredible management, and we have a great system of how people come together to decide how we're going to manage those resources. And so I think there's a lot of value here. However this thing shakes out, I think the fact that the community is so excited about what's going to happen, whether it's one way or the other, it just shows that we have people that care, and I know just from my personal experiences that we have an incredible resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful segue into how do we as a community get involved in this? What happens next?
So there's two groups right now that, from the consumptive user side, the spear fishermen and the fishermen, whether they're rod and reel or commercial, seem to be kind of gathering a lot of the input and putting a unified front out. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers California Division is a well-established organization that has dealt with a lot of similar things throughout the world of hunting and fishing. And then there's allwaters.org, which is a very new group out of Santa Cruz, California, that has a lot of really smart, well-educated people in it that is kind of basically helping bring all these points together and give out information for what we really need to do, basically to be heard.
I believe that's allwaters.org.
Allwaters.org.
Do Google that to be sure. But Brandon, could you also speak about the next meetings that are coming up? How, do we need to go in person? Do we hop online? Is there a link that we can share?
Sure. So honestly, the April meeting, again, is just basically to pass the proposal of the process. So I think we all agreed that the process was fine. I didn't see a problem with that. I don't think we need to be up in arms around that. And then they start basically placing petitions in different bins, either bin 1 or bin 2, deciding which one is urgent, which one is not so urgent. And then I believe the July meeting, they have a meeting in July, the Marine Resources Committee will basically decide or kind of show where they're at in the process with the petitions, how they're organizing them, and what they feel is urgent or not urgent, where I believe people can kind of start voicing opinions on maybe what's important or not important. And then the Fish and Game Commission will probably later on then vote on that. And then there's a meeting in November, which I feel like is probably going to be the one that will ultimately be very important to at least tune into. This is where they are really taking a look at where they're at with the specific petitions and getting more specific into the details of each one.
Okay. And we will be, of course, sharing this on our newsletters, social media, Spear America, and Focus Free Dive. It's a lot to keep track of. So, shoot us any questions or stuff. Anything from our live right now? Any questions?
So, a couple of questions we had. We had Mark ask about the MPAs. Are there MPAs with urchin harvest? Which I believe...
I don't actually know the answer to that, but I know that there's MPAs without urchin harvest. I don't think that there are, but I don't know specifically.
Yeah, I think the urchin harvest really is more of like a fishing regulation in general. I don't know that there's an MPA that specifies urchin
Right.
harvest.
For those of you that don't know, urchin harvest is a powerful tool for situations where urchin overabundance is hindering kelp growth. And that is a fear from many people in the community that if you make big swaths of areas restrictive MPAs where you cannot harvest urchins, well, then you might not have any kelp at all because you can't even go in and smash urchins. Again, the ocean works in large cycles, and there's a very big supply and demand type relationship towards food and predators, and urchins are in a way predators of kelp, and the ocean definitely, like I've seen in my experience, my short 20-ish years of spearfishing, entire kelp beds disappear and come back and disappear again based on favorable conditions and unfavorable conditions. And it's a very natural thing. It's a very human thing to have a very knee-jerk reaction to small changes, or what we see as massive changes when, realistically, all of these cycles in one way or another have probably been going on for millions of years.
Just to answer your question on the nrm.dfg.ca.gov, minor recreational fishery for purple urchins. There is a bag limit, I think 35 to 40, do double check that. I'm not getting definitive answer here whether or not you need a license, but if you don't, head out to Mission Point Park because there's loads.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're taking something, it's good to have a fishing license.
Yeah.
I think that
For
would
sure.
fall under that.
As a side note, I learned today that sea urchins actually make great fertilizer.
Oh, I'm
If
sure.
you don't like to eat them, grind them up and use them as fertilizer,
Yeah.
Or
interesting.
fish bait. The fish will eat it.
especially sheep's head, right?
Sheep head.
That's his thing. I love it.
So we have another question from Luke. Thoughts on species restrictions versus area restrictions. So maybe looking at size limits and bag limits versus like expanding MPA areas. At least for me on that question, really the big one that we're looking at is focusing on kelp health. So they're not really targeting fisheries per se. They're trying to increase boundaries in order to protect the more resilient kelp beds. So with that said, of course, I do believe that our regulations on our fish could be better.
That being said, though, laws and regulations are only as good as their enforceability.
It's true.
Sure.
And,
So
and
is
my,
it-
yeah,
yeah.
my thought was species restrictions, that's more expensive to enforce than space restrictions.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my thought as well. Just like,
That's true. I don't know. Kind of the way I see things is people don't care about things they don't have connection to. And in my experience, the people that are in these waters for consumptive purposes, like spearfishermen or fishermen, care more than anyone that the fish stocks are healthy. I mean, it's like what I live for is to go out there and have a healthy, thriving ecosystem where I can harvest food for myself, my friends, and my family. And I think that there's a lot of people that have strong opinions about the ocean and the ecosystem that have probably, or I know for a fact, have never spent reasonably long periods of time in the water. I mean, look at white sea bass. That's what I always tell people is look at white sea bass. How many people that don't hunt white sea bass go out in the kelp to find white sea bass? I only know one. My friend Mike Rabe is making a documentary about white sea bass, and he spends lots of time to film them. But he's also a white sea bass hunter, so he loves them.
yeah.
Most people don't even know they exist.
Really quick, as an aside, for those of you who are watching live on either Spear America or on me, Forever Rambling, do head to Focus Free Dives Live if you want your questions answered.
Yes. Good call.
We're not checking our phones.
Yes.
Any other questions coming up?
That is it at the moment.
Andrew, did you want to add anything to this discussion? I feel like you've been kind of our
Thoughtful.
Yeah, thoughtful, pensive guy over
side
here.
view. How many MPAs are in San Diego?
SMR in Cabrillo, that's one. There's La Jolla Cove, which I can't pronounce the Indian name for it. But La Jolla Cove's a
Also an
reserve.
SMR.
Is it SMR or full reserve? It's a full
I
reserve.
think SMR is a full reserve.
SMR was, yeah, actually I think you're right. I don't,
Marine Reserve.
Yeah,
I don't know
Marine-
what the S stands for.
anyways.
Scientific?
There's two there. There is one, I believe, just north of the Scripps Pier.
Mm-hmm.
There is at least one more in North County. I forget exactly what it's called because I don't dive North County a lot.
And then there's loads more as you move north,
Oh yeah,
too.
like most of Laguna,
Yeah.
like a lot of the
There's
big time
loads.
diving fishing spots got taken into MPAs.
Mm-hmm.
There is in Palos Verdes two. There is the Point Vicente, and then there's one over at Trump's there, or not Trump's, at Terranea. So there's two in Palos Verdes. There's Point Doom is in a marine protected area. There's quite a few. So
Yeah, there's quite
So
a
the
few around here. It's a big
expansion-
deal. It's a
the
big
major
deal.
expansions are here in San Diego and Malibu and Northern Channel Islands, and I believe there's some on the. Is there any on the Point Conception? And then Santa Cruz gets slammed.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna lose
Yeah.
coastal access.
I did put together a map. So on Forever Rambling Around, I did post a shareable map there that you can see all 7 that are being affected.
And that's by this specific petition.
By this, this one petition, yeah, exactly. We haven't even sifted through. So maybe that's something that we should set as a goal, as a group, to be able to talk about on our next live is the rest of these petitions that might be sliding under the radar.
I know that there's some, like I said, the trusted groups, All Waters and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and that's their whole purpose is to sift through these petitions, and everything that they've brought to attention so far is really that 2023 and 2033, these MPA expansions for kelp growth.
It's the 33
kelp,
that I really
kelp beds.
read the most about. So do anyone who's watching, if that's something that you would love for us to talk about, shoot us a DM, drop us a message. We like talking, I think. Anything else you guys want to cover tonight? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have questions or comments that maybe you think of later, feel free to just shoot a DM to Focus Freedive, and we're happy to, even if we don't know the answer, we'll look into it and try to get back in a timely manner. If you have suggestions for topics you would like to hear us discuss, especially around the MPA stuff, but honestly, if there's anything that you're just like, I would love for you guys to talk about this.
Sea bass. No, I'm just kidding.
Go to the club meetings for that stuff. But yeah, we're happy to keep everybody informed.
We're here
I
to
think-
create a community, and we want you in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
these processes can be a little scary and a little almost confusing.
The bureaucracy
So
is thick.
it's just good to get it out there, at least make it as clear as we possibly can. Obviously, we're still learning things about these processes too, so we're kind of along for the ride as well.
Yeah.
So we're happy to do some digging for you guys if we need to.
Cool.
I'll
Well
add
said.
all right, I'm going to attempt the name of the La Jolla MPA.
Okay,
Mahuatl?
sounds good to me.
So, all right.
Chupacabra.
Yeah, so somebody else should check on that. Yeah, but
Teotihuacan.
it ends with an ATL.
Yeah. All right.
Very nice.
You heard it
Love
here.
that. Yeah.
That's right.
Unless it was wrong,
Yeah.
in which case Ryan said it.
If you had to leave, or if you want to share this with your friends, we will be posting this on YouTube as well as IGTV. So stay posted for that. And thanks.
Thanks
those
for
of
tuning in,
who
you guys.
Yeah.
Dropped in.
Now you get to see us shut everything down.
Sweet.